Discover the incredible moment a struggling single mom falls asleep on a billionaire's shoulder in the suffocating heat of a sweltering summer evening in New York City. Sarah felt as if she were melting into the vinyl seat of the subway. The train rattled along the tracks, the rhythm a harsh reminder of the chaos that enveloped her life, a cycle of diners, dishes, and children. As she leaned against the cool metal wall, the exhaustion from a grueling shift at the diner tugged at her eyelids, her body finally demanding rest. Just as her eyes slipped shut, she unintentionally landed on the shoulder of a man beside her. A quick flicker of embarrassment shot through her until the familiar weight of weariness took over. Her mind raced, filled with thoughts of Lily's wide-eyed dreams and the looming stack of bills awaiting her at home. But safe in this cramped space, she couldn't help but wish to escape the relentless demands of her daily life, even if just for a moment. She felt the air thicken with the mingled sense of sweat and desperation, and deep within, a voice questioned whether she was enough. She fought the rising tide of doubt, struggling to hold on to the fierce protector she strived to be for her daughter. Before she knew it, the heat enveloping her faded slightly, replaced by an unexpected softness at Alex's shoulder. He was an enigma, the kind of man who had the world at his feet yet seemed wholly indifferent to it. He felt a small shift beside him, and through the veil of his own thoughts, he saw her an exhausted single mother seeking refuge from the storm of life. Curiosity gnawed at him as he contemplated her, something about her spirit captivated him. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The train jolted, and Sarah jerked awake, her heart racing at the intrusion of reality. She glanced sideways and met Alex's eyes, momentarily lost in the depths of his gaze. Sorry, she mumbled, retreating inward. But as they awkwardly exchanged words about the stifling heat and their long hours, the wary barrier between them began to crumble. What felt like judgment from his polished exterior morphed into a genuine connection. Yet doubt swirled within her. Would he see her for what she truly was, or merely another poor, overworked cog in the city's relentless machine? Then came the shock of a message from her estranged husband, dredging up memories she desperately wanted to forget. Threats that whispered of instability taunted her mind, tugging at her soul. She felt defenseless, fragile under the weight of their arrival, shaking her carefully constructed world. As she opened up to Alex about her struggles, a part of her feared he might offer help, which would only complicate everything more. The subway continued its path through the darkness, oblivious to the tension building between them. She was at an emotional precipice, caught in a storm of fear of showing vulnerability, fear of losing everything she fought for, fear that the connection she was building might tumble away like sandcastles washed by the tide. In that moment, their lives interlocked, but just as she opened her heart, a sudden vibration in her pocket shattered the delicate thread of connection. The unmistakable sound of her phone ringing, a mute reminder that chaos never strayed far. Sarah's heart sank as she pulled her phone from her pocket, instinctively bracing herself for the storm brewing on the other end of the line. The name flickered across the screen, a haunting reminder of a life she barely recognized anymore. Each moment of connection she had felt with Alex moments ago faded, overshadowed by the turmoil that awaited her. Mommy. Lily's bright voice echoed in her mind, drawing her back from her spiral of despair. Her daughter deserved so much more than this joint struggle. She deserved a life without dark shadows lurking in the corners, darkness that seemed to approach with every phone call from her ex-husband. Steeling herself, she swiped to answer, her own voice barely above a whisper. It's me," a familiar baritone filled the subway car, spreading an icy reminder of past failures. Each syllable felt like a weight pinning her to her seat. As they exchanged terse words, his need for control clashed against her desire for independence, a battle she had fought mercilessly. "I need to talk about the bills," he continued, the casual nature of his demand grating against her resolve. "I'll handle it," she said, her voice shaking, the words a weak shield against the storm raging within her. She had promised herself never to surrender to his demands again, yet the confidence she attempted to project faltered under his familiar scrutiny. As she hung up, Sarah felt the warmth of Alex's presence beside her, the stark contrast serving as a bittersweet reminder of what connection could feel like. However, instead of leaning into that newfound comfort, she recoiled inward, fighting the urge to wallow in her sense of defeat. "I'm sorry about that," she muttered, not entirely sure who she was apologizing to, Alex, or perhaps to herself. "I can't imagine what you're going through," Alex replied softly, his voice devoid of pity yet overflowing with a depth she found intriguing. A small flicker of something settled in her stomach, but doubt quickly shrouded the potential for any genuine emotion. Was she simply looking for an escape in his understanding? Would she risk bringing someone new into the whirlpool of her problems? "Maybe I'll add free therapist to my resume," he joked lightly, the corners of his mouth lifting in that effortless charm she noticed earlier. Beneath the surface, she sensed his genuine concern, yet it terrified her. The risk of leaning into this connection felt insurmountable, as floods of doubt dragged her backward. In that moment, Sarah faced a personal reckoning. She had seldom allowed others into her chaos for fear of judgment, fear of becoming a burden. But the fear of loneliness gnawed at her, mingling with the realization of her own resilience. Could she take a leap of faith? Would opening up provide her the sense of liberation she craved? Maybe Alex was an anchor, not a storm. Intrigued, she glanced sideways at him. With his composed demeanor and kind eyes, he seemed different. There existed more than just surface depth, a challenge to confront herself and decide whether to embrace this unexpected companionship or let it slip by like other golden opportunities in her past. Just as the turmoil of her thoughts reached a crescendo, there was another jolt from the subway. Sarah looked down the car, her anxiety morphing into a deep-seated wariness as shadows flitted across her vision. The familiar silhouettes of her past crept forth, and the very notion of her freedom felt threatened again. Alex noticed her tension and asked, "Are you all right?" But the storm brewing inside Sarah demanded her attention. The moment had come for her to face her fears directly, not just within but outside, where echoes of her former life threatened to resurface once more. The subway screeched to a halt, and before she could formulate a response, a figure stepped briskly on board, his eyes searching every face until they landed on hers. Recognition crystallized, and suddenly Sarah's world spun faster than anticipated, setting the stage for an unavoidable confrontation. The time had indeed come to face the ghosts of her past. Sarah's breath hitched as the figure advanced, his presence charging the air with memories she'd tried to bury. With every step he took, her resolve wavered, yet she felt an inexplicable urge to confront the pain that threatened to consume her every waking moment. "Sarah," he greeted, the smirk on his face feeling like a slap. Years of manipulation and chaos were encapsulated in that single word. Time and place faded, and Sarah was once more the scared woman who had felt her power stripped away. "Why are you here?" Daring herself to meet his gaze, she immediately regretted it. The confidence she tried to project faltered, shadows of the past creeping into her mind. "Isn't it time we had a little chat?" he said, his casual tone unsettling, as if they were merely discussing the weather rather than the impending storm of their exchanges. Sarah felt Alex's presence beside her, firm yet unobtrusive, as though he were silently reinforcing her. "It's not happening," she retorted, the steely edge to her voice realigning her shaken identity. Clenching her fists, she sought to pull her strength from the depths of her frustration. This was not the arena for weakness, it was time to reclaim her voice. "Funny, I remember a time when you thought you needed my decisions to guide your life," he taunted, a smirk lingering as he leaned closer. The darkness wrapped around her like a shroud threatened to tighten its grip. The subway's neon lights flickered ominously, mirroring her inner turmoil. Memories of their life together flooded her, a whirlwind of passionate highs intertwined with soul-crushing lows. She had lived under the belief that she needed his approval to thrive, a belief she had recently begun to dismantle. The sight of Alex transformed her internal chaos into external determination. He had been a reprieve, a safe space. Just as she had silent hopes of moving forward, here he stood, a harbinger of the past refusing to dissipate. She looked at Alex beside her, drawing comfort from the warmth of his presence. Perhaps he could be a safeguard. "Sarah, it's time to wake up from this delusion," he continued, oblivious to her shifting anxieties or her newfound resolve. The stab of his words jolted through her like electric pulses. It was no longer about him exerting power over her. She refused to be that scared girl. Delusion? You're mistaken, she declared, a steadiness creeping into her voice. You don't control my life anymore. From within, she discovered strength she didn't realize existed. The realization shook her she could stand up. No longer a perennial victim, but also a thriving individual. The emotional shackle he represented had lost its grip. It was both liberating and terrifying, but she sensed her voice willing to project broader horizons. Sarah glanced at the faces reading her chilling confrontation, disbelief and intrigue playing in their eyes. This moment wasn't just for her ex, it was for Alex, for Lily, and especially for herself. The train continued on its path, but there was momentum now. She could feel it propelling her away from her past, away from fear. Steeling herself, she shared a quick glance with Alex, who nodded subtly, a silent encouragement that anchored her confidence. She could run or rise. I'll handle this, and I'll handle my life on my own terms, she realized, savoring the truth of her declaration. His laughter rang cold, a dismissive counter to her resolution. Good luck with that. But as he turned away, seeking a place to hide in the crowd, she knew she had begun something irrevocable within herself. Yet, in the distance, she felt something shift again. As the subway car inched to a stop, a figure bolted in, attention locked onto her with an unsettling intensity. Was it the realization of the shadows she dared to face, or an emerging foe waiting to unveil another chapter in her journey? The uncertainty lingered, amplifying the urgency stitching through her heart. The transition wasn't over, her challenges loomed larger than ever. What figures might rise from the complexities she had begun unraveling, and could she continue to face them with the strength she just discovered? That nagging question remained: would it be enough? Sarah's heart raced as the figure approached, a woman with striking features and an intensity that pierced through the noise of the subway car. The newcomer seemed to thrum with energy, and for a fleeting moment, Sarah felt lost in a haze of uncertainty. Who was she, and why did her unwavering stare feel like a challenge? As the train slowed, Sarah tightened her grip on the metal pole, her knuckles widening at the sudden rush of adrenaline. She was still reeling from her confrontation with her ex, and now this? It was too much, too soon. Navigating this volatile space seemed like an uphill climb, each moment testing not just her resolve, but her very existence. Do you have a problem? The woman asked, her voice steady, but the undercurrent was fierce and uncompromising. Sarah's instincts kicked in, and she realized that this was not simply a stranger stepping on her territory. Here was another potential adversary, and Sarah could feel the stakes rising. No, I don't think that's the case, Sarah replied, her voice steadier than she felt. Taking a deep breath, she remembered the power she had just tasted, the resolve that had compelled her to address her past. Yet, beneath her bravado, she sensed fear whispering that she might not be ready for another confrontation, especially one that could compound the turmoil she had just begun to unravel. The woman took a step closer, seemingly unfazed by the bustling crowd around them. Interesting. Because it looks like you're having an emotional meltdown. Care to share what has got you rattled? Each word seemed to peel back layers of Sarah's composure. Her mind raced. Was this woman just an eager bystander, or did she have her own agenda? Sarah's pulse quickened as she searched for a defensive reply. I'm dealing with my life, actually, she snapped, twitching in frustration. What business is it of yours? Alex, sensing the brewing tension, placed a hand on her shoulder, grounding her momentarily as if to say, stay calm. She appreciated his presence, though she wouldn't let someone else's impatience dictate her feelings. The woman smirked, not one of mockery, but rather the knowing grin of someone who has danced this dance before. Good for you. But life demands more than mere survival, doesn't it? It seems you're on the brink of something profound. You should seize it. A flash of recognition ignited within Sarah. The woman exuded a potent blend of audacity and ambition that made her acutely aware of her own limitations. Instead of backing down, Sarah felt an intrinsic desire to rise to the challenge, hungry to embrace the potential this moment held. Is this some sort of motivational speech? Sarah scoffed, masking the tumultuous stirrings inside her. Each word reminded her of the power and opportunity that awaited her beyond this chaotic exchange. Because I'm not looking for advice from a complete stranger. The woman met her gaze squarely, and in that moment, Sarah saw remarkable truth reflected back at her own frustrations, fears, and aspirations swirling together in a potent mix. Perhaps this woman was more than an unwelcome interruption. Perhaps she was a catalyst, pushing Sarah to confront the depths of her own development. The subway jolted to a stop, and without thinking, Sarah stepped forward. "What is your name?" she impulsively asked, her voice steady. There was a challenge implicit in her words, a calling for interaction that far surpassed mere pleasantries. "Isabella," the woman stated, her tone shifting to something softer but still authoritative. "And you, Sarah, seem to be standing at a crossroads. Will you take the leap?" Isabella's challenge reverberated in Sarah's mind like a bell tolling, summoning her willingness to act. The doors parted, and as the crowd surged, so too did uncertainty knot within her. Grappling with the knowledge that this moment might hold the key to unlocking her next steps, Sarah hesitated, breath caught in her chest. Could she trust this stranger? But what if this encounter was exactly what she needed? Everything inside her screamed to leap, to embrace the ambiguity, yet the daunting question lingered. Was she ready to commit to the path that lay ahead? The train rumbled back into motion, and Sarah knew she couldn't remain stagnant. Would she engage with whatever possibilities lay before her, or would she retreat into the comfortable shadows of her past? The question marked the opening of a new horizon, one filled with potential yet laced with formidable risks. As she stood there, the weight of the choice hanging in the air, another figure appeared on the opposite platform. Who was this newcomer, and how would they impact her unfolding journey? Sarah's heart thudded in her chest as her eyes locked on the figure across the platform. A wiry man with tousled hair and a confident stride exuded an air of undeniable charisma. With each second that passed, the reality of her choices began to crystallize in her mind, melding with an unexpected surge of determination. Was he just another stranger bound for an unseen destination, or did he hold the potential key to unlocking her next chapter? A breath caught in her throat at the thought of exploring this new avenue, one laden with possibilities that ignited her curiosity. Who was he, and how could he possibly affect the decisions she needed to make? Isabella's words echoed in her thoughts. Will you take the leap? The challenge had lit a fire within her, every fiber of her being buzzed with a sense of urgency. But could she navigate this uncertainty? Her mind raced through the implications of engaging with this new man. She thought of her chaotic life, the lingering shadows of her past, and the effort required to become the person she longed to be. The fear of failure clawed at her insides, but so did a burgeoning desire to step outside her self-imposed limitations. The train's screeching whir pulled Sarah back into the present. She noticed the wiry man observing her. A quizzical expression flickered across his angular face, as if he could sense the tempest brewing behind her calm exterior. A small knot of anxiety tightened in her stomach, yet she stood her ground. Alex turned to her, his concern palpable. You okay? His voice was like a tether. She appreciated the grounding reality he provided but felt irritated by the intrusion into her burgeoning resolve. Yeah, I'm fine, Sarah responded, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Her internal conflict swirled. Would this moment be a catalyst for change or just another encounter to be tucked away in the archives of forgetfulness? The doors slid open, and she caught the stranger's gaze again. Something in his eyes, a mix of daring and encouragement, nudged her to take action. Hey! Sarah shouted as she stepped off the train, her voice cutting through the cacophony. The man turned, surprise morphing into a hint of interest as their eyes locked. She felt both exposed and invigorated, a rush of adrenaline coursing through her veins. Yeah? He replied, casual yet intrigued. I was just wondering where you're heading, Sarah said, fumbling for confidence. I mean, you look like someone who knows where they're going. His laugh was genuine, laced with curiosity. I was actually running late for a meeting, but something tells me that pausing here might be more interesting. The air crackled with unspoken potential. Sarah felt her walls beginning to crumble, layer by layer. This interaction was anything but flippant. It was a convergence of ambition and risk that collided with her hopes. Do you always make decisions based on gut feeling? she asked, an impulsive challenge filling the space between them. You'd be surprised, he responded, stepping closer. Sometimes, those gut feelings lead to the best discoveries. The spark of connection ignited something deeper within her. She was yearning for more than the mundane patterns of her life. The shadows of her past whispered doubts in her ear. She had been burned before, but perhaps this was, in fact, a new beginning. What's your name? She fired off, aware of the ticking seconds as the train continued rolling away with an unyielding rhythm. Jake, he replied, his smile almost disarming. And you are? Sarah. The name felt light on her tongue, as though it could carry all the weight of her longings and aspirations. Suddenly, Sarah was struck with an insight. This brief encounter was a bridge to the self she wished to embody. The claustrophobia of her previous life might finally give way to something liberating. A profound realization dawned upon her. She could either let fear dictate her next steps or choose to take a risk that could potentially alter her trajectory. Do you want to grab a coffee? She blurted, surprising herself with the words. Jake's brow arched, amusement flickering in his eyes. Is this another one of those gut feelings? The playful banter stirred her heart, but it also ratcheted up the stakes. Her pulse raced and doubts crept back in, whispering that she would never measure up to the potential this man might represent. But then she recalled Isabella's challenge, to seize the moment. Yes, she asserted, firm in her resolve. I think it is. As they walked away from the subway station, Sarah felt the tremors of change coursing through her. Would this decision help her dismantle the barriers she had erected for so long? The ambiguity of the future loomed ahead, but for the first time in ages, she felt equipped to embrace it. As they stepped into the nearby cafe, Sarah sensed the tides of her life shifting beneath her. But would this encounter be the beginning of transformation, or just another fleeting moment lost in time? As they settled into a cozy corner of the cafe, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee enveloped Sarah like a warm embrace, momentarily dispelling the anxieties that had chased her all day. She felt a mix of excitement and apprehension swirl within her. Could a simple coffee lead to something greater? The eager chatter around them faded into a muffled hum as she focused on Jake. So, what's your story? He asked, stirring his coffee casually. His tone was inviting, and the way he leaned in slightly made her heart race. It was an innocent question, yet layered with potential and opportunity to redefine the narrative of her life. Sarah hesitated. The urge to share her experiences warred with the instinct to shield her vulnerabilities. There's not much to tell, she began, cautious. I'm just a single mom trying to make ends meet. Jake's eyebrows rose slightly, his interest piqued. That sounds tough. How do you manage? The sincerity in his voice pulled her in. She took a breath, risking the openness she often guarded. Working 2 jobs, juggling daycare, it can be overwhelming. Sometimes, I feel like I'm just surviving, she replied, her voice wavering. The honesty of that confession surprised her. For so long, she had donned an armor of casual indifference, but Jake's presence chipped away at her defenses. I wasn't always this way, she continued, flushed with a renewed sense of vulnerability. I had dreams once, writing, traveling. Her voice trailed off, stung by the realization that her aspirations had crumbled beneath the weight of reality. Wow, he said lightly, eyes glinting with genuine admiration. That's amazing. Why not pursue them now? It was a provocative question, and she felt a spark of defiance flaring in her chest. Because it's hard, she said, crossing her arms instinctively, almost as if to shield herself from the weight of his inquiry. Life isn't so forgiving, you know? Jake nodded slowly, his gaze steady, disarming in its intensity. I get that. But from what I see, you're tougher than you think. Maybe taking a leap could be what you need. His words echoed in her mind, stirring a tempest of emotions. Doubts flooded her thoughts. Could she really tremble out of her routine? Could she actually regain some semblance of the self she had lost? As they continued to talk, their conversation flowed naturally. Jake shared tales of his travels and the ventures he had pursued. His ambition matched her longing, and she felt an unspoken connection growing. Each shared laugh chipped away at her walls, and with every exchanged glance, she felt that familiar fear beginning to dissipate, yet, there was still a flicker of doubt igniting at the back of her mind. What if this was just a pit stop on her journey? What if Jake would vanish into the ether, leaving her more adrift than before? Taking a sip of her coffee to mask her unease, she decided to probe. What about you, Jake? What are your dreams? He paused, a moment of introspection washing over his features. I guess I've always been drawn to innovation, to creating things that matter. But I've let the pressure of success define me lately. It's easy to lose sight of what truly drives you. His vulnerability resonated with her. It laid bare the common thread of struggle that bound them, banished aspirations and the grind of daily survival. Sarah suddenly realized that perhaps this chance meeting was not just about her transformation, it was also about mutual discovery. Jake leaned forward, a serious note creeping into his playful demeanor. Sarah, we all have stories that make us feel small. But maybe that's just part of the process, right? Time to confront what we're afraid of. His encouragement was like a launch pad, invigorating yet terrifying. She felt a surge of determination. Maybe she could confront her fears instead of letting them dictate her decisions. But how could she begin that process? What would that look like in her life? Tentatively, she leaned into the conversation, considering using this moment not just as a refuge from her reality but as a way to embark on rediscovering herself. As they exchanged dreams and fears over steaming cups, Sarah felt an unfamiliar rush and urge to act, to awaken from the stupor she had succumbed to for far too long. But how would she embrace this cascade of change amidst the complexities of her life? The cafe's ambience faded around her, and she wondered what her decisions would look like if she took that proverbial leap. And just as the thought began to crystallize, an unsettling realization punctured her excitement. She was still anchored to her past and the intricacies of her responsibilities. The moment hung heavy in the air, a weight of possibility balanced with uncertainty. Would she cling to the status quo or leap into the unknown? As the conversation swirled, a voice cut through, asking, "Is this the moment to confront your greatest fear?" Sarah swallowed hard, the challenge clear before her. Would she have the audacity to answer that call? What would happen when the time came to face her own truths? Jake took a sip of his coffee, the steam curling between them, while Sarah's thoughts raced. She was suspended in a moment that felt both monumental and terrifying. Each word exchanged felt like a small nudge, pushing her closer to the precipice of change she had always feared, a change she had longed for yet felt unworthy of. What do you really want, Sarah? The question hung in the air, so simple, yet layered with implications. She felt almost exposed under Jake's scrutiny. Did she even know what she wanted? In the chaos of her existence, surviving from one day to the next, her dreams had become whispers drowned out by the noise of responsibility. I want to write, she finally confessed. The admission hung between them, fragile and raw. I used to write poems and short stories. Nothing published, but one day I dreamed of it. I thought I could have a voice. Jake nodded, encouraging her to continue. The sincerity in his gaze buoyed her spirits, if only for a moment. And then what happened? A wave of self-doubt crashed over her, words tumbled out hurriedly. Life happened, I guess. I needed to prioritize being a mom and providing for my family. Writing took a back seat. It became a fantasy rather than a goal. Jake's expression shifted, concern mingling with admiration. But what if you treated it like a goal again? What if you started writing even if it's just for yourself? You might surprise yourself. The suggestion ignited a flicker of hope mixed with fear. But would she dare to try? The thought of picking up a pen again exhilarated and terrified her. She could almost feel the weight of her responsibilities closing in, threatening to crush her aspirations before they took flight. I don't know if I have the time, she replied, her voice breaking under the pressure of her own excuses. Don't get stuck in the trap of too busy. It's easy to look at the obstacles and let them dictate what we can achieve. You can set aside just a few minutes each day. Write a sentence, a paragraph. Just start. As Jake spoke, a realization stirred within her. Perhaps the first step was indeed small, manageable, something that could fit into the cracks of her day. Could she really do this? Could she cultivate these forgotten dreams amidst the chaos? She felt the urgency wrapping around her, urging her toward that elusive leap. She looked at Jake, his eyes sparkling with conviction, pushing against the suffocating self-doubt she had worn like a cloak for far too long. Perhaps this was the moment she needed to seize, not just for herself but for her daughter too. I suppose I could start a little notebook. Nothing too serious at first, she found herself saying, a tentative smile breaking through her otherwise cautious demeanor. That sounds perfect. And I'd love to read some of it when you're ready, he said, his enthusiasm infectious. A warm thrill surged within her, igniting a sense of purpose she thought long extinguished. The possibilities rolled through her mind like waves on an uncharted shore. If she could weave her writing back into the fabric of her life, what else might blossom? But the thrill was accompanied by a looming uncertainty. What would the fallout of change look like? As the cafe around them buzzed with life, she caught sight of a mother and daughter sharing a laugh, and her heart clenched. The prospect of pursuing her dreams felt sacred yet selfish. Would she be neglecting her responsibilities in the process? Sarah, you should be excited, Jake said, sensing her retreat behind a curtain of doubt. There's magic in pursuing what lights your fire, and it doesn't mean neglecting other areas of your life. It could enhance them. Your daughter will see you chase your dreams, and that's a powerful lesson. His words struck a chord, reverberating through her insecurities. The image of her daughter's small face lit with pride at seeing her mother explore her passions flashed in her mind. But shadows still swirled. Could she truly balance it all, or would her attempt to reach for more drain the energy she needed for her daily obligations? The confusion tightened around her throat, and Sarah's chest felt heavy with the weight of her unsettled thoughts. She wanted to embrace this idea, but the shadows of self-doubt loomed larger. What if she failed? What if writing only highlighted her inadequacies? The moment had arrived, pressing in on her with insistent urgency, that visceral moment when she had to decide whether to cling to the safety of the familiar or venture into the uncertain realms of change. Would opening up to her potential extinguish the spark she and her daughter shared? With resolve battling uncertainty, she took a decisive breath. I'll take it one word at a time. But if I fail, can I count on you to remind me this is about the journey, not just the finish line? Jake's smile was bright, an invitation into a world she had almost forgotten. Absolutely, I'll be your biggest supporter. Yet as she spoke, a deeper question nestled at the back of her mind, grappling for attention. Could her renewed pursuit of writing expose deeper fears? Would her leap into this new journey ultimately reveal the remnants of her insecurities? The coffee cooled in front of her as discussions around them faded. She faced him, the weight of her own readiness sinking deeper. The truth loomed ahead, promising revelations that might shake the ground beneath her feet. What hidden desires or fears might she unearth in the process? With every passing moment, Sarah could feel the time ticking down to a decision. The moment was near to unveil the depths of her own courage. What untold truths lay behind the curtain of her ambitions? Would she emerge transformed, ready to confront not just her dreams, but the very identity she had been so careful to shield? As Sarah returned home, her heart raced. Each step toward her front door felt heavy with the weight of her revelations. The notebook she had envisioned was no longer just a symbol, it had become a tangible reminder of the promise she made to herself. She reached for the door handle, hesitating before finally pushing it open. Inside, the familiar chaos awaited her. Toddler toys scattered across the floor, laundry piled in precarious stacks, and the delicate smell of macaroni and cheese wafting through the air. Her daughter, Lily, peeked out from behind the couch, grinning widely, her innocence a stark contrast to the tempest of thoughts swirling in Sarah's mind. "Mommy. Playtime." Lily chirped, bursting with energy, her little hands tugging insistently at Sarah's. A wave of guilt washed over Sarah. The thought of her daughter enjoying a moment without her presence clenched her heart. How could she indulge in her own aspirations when Lily needed her? What kind of mother would she be if she chose to write over participating fully in her daughter's life? Yet somewhere within her, a flicker of determination ignited. "Just a moment, sweetheart," she murmured, dashing to the nearby kitchen table, where her notepad had long lain untouched beneath a pile of overdue bills. She picked it up, her fingers brushing against its pages, feeling the promise of a new beginning surge through her. "Okay, Lily. How about we make up a story together?" she suggested, the words feeling both new and familiar. Lily beamed with excitement as she jumped into Sarah's lap, and for a brief moment, the weight of her earlier doubts melted away. They began weaving fantastical tales of princesses and dragons, with Sarah jotting down snippets on the notebook's clean pages. Each delightfully absurd line became a stepping stone, solidifying her identity as a writer. In that shared laughter with her daughter, Sarah glimpsed the balance that might exist between her dreams and responsibilities after all, but the doubt still lingered, haunting the edges of her thoughts. Could she maintain this balance? Would Lily tire of her mother's exploration into writing when it cut into their playtime? Fear clawed at her as she could envision the potential fallout of chasing her interests. Yet, they had created a precious moment together, buoyed by imagination, and the thought alone felt worth pursuing. That evening, as she tucked Lily into bed, Sarah felt a swell of conflicting emotions. She read the bedtime story with an endless cycle of love, but beneath it lay a rush of anxiety. Would her nights soon be consumed with writing, leaving less time for moments like these? The battle waged silently, and when sleep crept over her daughter's face, the questions rattled around in Sarah's mind, nudging at her with urgency. Weeks passed in a blur. She thrived in bursts of inspiration rather than the consistency she had dreamt of. A stolen half-hour here, a late-night whisper of creativity there. Each sentence was an act of defiance against the doubt that sought to stifle her. But with each word written came the reckless possibility that she would reveal more of herself than she intended, an exploration fraught with danger, trauma, and desire lingering just under the surface. What emerged surprised her. Writing was more than a creative outlet, it became a mirror reflecting her hidden fears and desires. She discovered her own voice, one she had almost forgotten amidst the demands of motherhood. However, with light came shadows, and challenges crept in. A burgeoning anxiety ensnared her as she began to feel the pressure of ambitions not just as uplifting but also as burdensome. It all came to a head one sleepless night, the quiet of her home amplifying her fears as they gnawed within her. She felt herself at a crossroads, aware that the pursuit of writing could ignite a significant shift in her life. What awaited her if she chose to fully commit to this path? Would she find fulfillment or merely expose herself to deeper insecurities and heartache, as uncertainty conspired to bind her in fear? She picked up her pen, breathing deeply. Would she choose to persevere even when her inner critic screamed to retreat? The stark contrast of what could be loomed ahead, each word holding the power to alter her reality. In that moment, surrounded by darkness but fueled by determination, Sarah felt the thrill of her journey's true beginning. She realized change wasn't merely around the corner, it was a chasm requiring a leap of faith. Just as she set down her pen, her phone buzzed with an unexpected message from Jake, igniting both hope and fear. It read, "Have you written anything new? I can't wait to hear your thoughts. Let's meet." Her heart raced again, anticipation mingling with dread. What if her vulnerability and burgeoning career intertwined with his expectations? Turning the page felt inevitable, yet overwhelming. Would this be the moment she found strength or crumble under the weight of external judgments? With the night stretching endlessly ahead of her, Sarah couldn't help but wonder, would this next meeting bring clarity or plunge her deeper into the chaos she was trying so desperately to navigate? Sarah sat on the edge of her bed, her heart still racing from Jake's message. The shadows of doubt loomed larger than ever as she grappled with the implications of meeting him. How could she possibly share her burgeoning work with someone whose expectations felt as towering as the city skyline? She glanced at the clock, each tick echoing her anxious heartbeat. The scribbled stories in her notebook swam before her eyes, stories that encapsulated her fears, dreams, and the juxtaposition she faced in her life. Would Jake understand the whirlwind of emotions embedded in her words, or would he dismiss them as mere hobbyist musings? The allure of creative validation warred with a crippling sense of inadequacy. Determined to turn her inner turmoil into a focus point, Sarah rose and walked to the kitchen. The clattering of pots and pans as she prepared a cup of chamomile tea served as a modest distraction, a grounding ritual that steadied her thoughts. The steam curled into the air, mingling with her conflicting feelings, soothing yet introspective. "Okay, Sarah," she whispered to herself, gripping the warm mug tightly. "What do you want from this?" The question hung heavily in the air, demanding attention. Did she crave validation, or was it the simple act of sharing her journey that she yearned for? Could she strip away the noise of external expectations and focus on her own narrative? Lily's soft giggles echoed in the back of her mind, grounding her in the reality of her responsibilities and the love she felt for her daughter. As she took a sip of the calming tea, Sarah felt a swelling sense of resolve. Writing was not just a solitary ambition, it was also a legacy. If she could forge her identity as a writer, she could also teach her daughter the power of pursuing dreams, even when the world felt daunting. Later, after settling Lily for the night, Sarah returned to her writer's corner, now enhanced by the promise of clarity. She opened her notebook, and the blank pages seemed to beckon her, daring her to plunge deeper into her explorations. Guided by a new sense of commitment, she began to write. This time, she wrote about the journey of a woman confronting her fears, unmasking her vulnerabilities, and standing tall despite the voices whispering doubt. As the words flowed, her earlier uncertainties melted. Each stroke of the pen served as a mirror, a reflection of growth and a fierce declaration of her resolve. Hours slipped by unnoticed, and the sheets became a tapestry of words. Through the act of creating, she uncovered latent insights about herself. This wasn't merely about the craft. It was about resilience, an invitation to confront not just her fears, but the layers of potential she had yet to uncover. As dawn's light seeped through the curtains, illuminating the room, Sarah finally put her pen down, feeling a swell of accomplishment. She could face her meeting with Jake, now armed with newfound self-awareness. It was time to venture out of her comfort zone. However, the fleeting moment of victory was interrupted by a new wave of anxiety. The thoughts of sharing her work turned from exhilaration to dread once more. Would she be ready to lay her heart on the line, to unveil her struggles and dreams to Jake? Her phone buzzed on the table, breaking the silence, this time with a message from Jake. Looking forward to our chat later. Can't wait to hear more about your writing journey. She stared at the screen, a mix of hope and fear surging through her. Was it possible that he sensed the weight of her words, the essence of her struggles, and would meet them with empathy? The anticipation stirred a familiar urgency to reconcile both her ambitions and fears before stepping into unfamiliar territory. The time had come for her to face her anxieties head-on. But was she prepared to reveal her true self to someone who might see through the mask she had so carefully crafted? With a deep breath, Sarah knew she was on the brink of a critical decision. Would she embrace the vulnerability of sharing her story, or would the fear of judgment push her back into the shadows? And as those questions swirled within her, she braced herself for what lay ahead, realizing that the encounter was more than just a meeting. It was a defining moment in her journey towards becoming the writer she yearned to be. Days turned into weeks, and Sarah's dedication to her writing became both a sanctuary and a battleground. Each evening, after tucking Lily into bed, she wrestled with her fears, unfolding her heart onto the pages of her notebook. Those written words began to weave a tapestry of resilience and authenticity. For the first time, Sarah felt she was capturing not just stories, but fragments of herself that had long been buried beneath a myriad of responsibilities. She found herself repeatedly reflecting on Jake's words, which also replayed in conversations with Isabella, the woman from the subway. Their encouragement ignited a fire within her, one that transcended her fear of judgment and propelled her toward vulnerability. This transformative process was both liberating and excruciating, as each sentence validated her past struggles while simultaneously daring her to embrace the brilliance of potential. As the final day would come for her meeting with Jake, Sarah felt the storm of emotions intensify. Excitement warred with a sense of dread as she prepared to step into a professional realm she had often dismissed. Would Jake understand the intricacies of her narrative? Would he find value in the experiences that had shaped her from a vulnerable single mom into a resolute writer? On the morning of their meeting, Sarah meticulously chose her outfit, a simple but confident ensemble that signified her resolve. She understood that this wouldn't merely be a casual coffee, it would be a moment of defining her trajectory. After gathering her thoughts, she slid her notebook into her bag, an emblem of her journey poised to share the raw depths of her embrace with both ambition and anxiety. Upon arriving at the cafe, Sarah spotted Jake seated at their usual corner. The flickering excitement in his eyes when he saw her ignited a sense of belonging. "You look amazing," he greeted, his smile easing her tension. As they settled into their conversation, Sarah felt the initial hesitance melt away. They exchanged laughter and meaningful anecdotes, creating an engaging space where dreams and aspirations danced between them. "Let us hear what you've written," Jake prompted, his eyes sparkling with curiosity. "I've been looking forward to this." With a steadying breath, Sarah pulled her notebook from her bag, the weight of its pages anchoring her resolve. The moment felt monumental. She laid her heart bare, reading aloud snippets of her stories, poems intertwined with the challenges of motherhood and self-discovery. Each word resonated with authenticity, and she finally felt the honor of reclaiming her narrative. As she spoke, she could feel the nervous energy dissolving under Jake's attentive gaze. He listened intently, nodding appreciatively, prompting her for more details, each question crackling with genuine curiosity. The space between them shimmered with validation, transforming every doubt she harbored into a chorus of encouragement. "You have a gift, Sarah," Jake said, his voice sincere. "This is powerful. You have to keep sharing your voice, even when it feels daunting. Don't ever doubt that." Sarah's heart swelled at his recognition, yet the shadows of her fears still lingered. "But what if I'm not good enough? What if I fail?" She confessed, the vulnerability of her admission lacing her words with trepidation. "Failure is a part of growth," Jake replied calmly. "The important thing is to keep pushing through. You're rewriting your story, building from within. Trust the process." In the midst of her struggle to maintain hope, his encouragement pierced her worries with clarity. Sarah felt a rush of confidence swell within her. She realized she had risen from being a woman burdened by doubt to someone approaching the horizon of her potential. By the time the meeting concluded, Sarah had not only shared her stories but had begun to reshape her own narrative. They exchanged numbers, promising to encourage one another in their respective journeys. As they parted ways, she felt a sense of exhilaration. She had conquered a barrier and embraced the fullness of her dreams. The moment was not merely about writing or ambition. It was about affirming her right to exist fully as herself. After leaving the cafe, Sarah walked through the bustling streets of New York with newfound confidence. The weight of her ambitions felt lighter, buoyed by both Jake's validation and her own realization of her journey. Arriving home, she watched Lily, the embodiment of her purpose, and felt an overwhelming sense of joy. "I'm not just a mom. I'm a writer too," she whispered to herself, a mantra that solidified her transformation. With renewed determination, she sat down to write after tucking Lily in. Tonight, she would not only craft tales but would etch her identity onto the pages. As her pen danced across the page, Sarah felt invigorated, no longer bound by her fears but propelled by her decisions. At that moment, she achieved not only recognition for her story but solid confidence in her ability to merge her aspirations with her reality. She was no longer just navigating life, she was redefining it. And as she continued to write, the world outside shifted, but within her, a profound calm settled. She had seized her accountability, and in doing so, had paved the way for lasting transformation. It was time for Sarah to understand that her story was one of resilience and courage. That she was enough, completely enough. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support, and don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.